By the early 90s, the Metal Gear series was an innovator of storytelling and the stealth genre as a whole, but was highly obscured by the rest of the world. The ones Hideo Kojima developed were only released in Japan. The NES versions were inferior in comparison, and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake was released late in the life cycle of the MSX2, when other systems like the Super Nintendo and the Sega Mega Drive were already released, so it was mostly forgotten despite being one of the best games of the third generation. So Kojima went on to focus on other projects using CD technology to expand his storytelling skills with Policenauts, but even that was only released in Japan, again not getting the recognition it deserves. However, with the release of the PlayStation in 1994, which encouraged mature titles, Konami wanted their best workers to make games for it, and Kojima decided to revisit Metal Gear. Development on Metal Gear Solid began in mid-1995, with Konami Computer Entertainment Japan being formed to ensure the sequel was made, and the team's intentions were to make the best PlayStation game ever. With the console's ability to create 3D polygonal graphics, the team sought to do things no other video game had. Kojima, the movie buff that he is, wanted the game to feel like a proper cinematic experience, not like those FMV titles where you have to select the correct command to continue. He didn't care what people thought or whether they would play it or not, he only wanted to make the game he wanted to make. If there's one thing I love, it's having 100% creative control. Their way and not following other people's rules, not even a gaming company, which is partly what led to his departure from Konami in 2015, but anyway. It was unveiled at E3 in 1997. Note that gamers outside of Japan were mostly familiar with the NES titles, and when they saw this, despite no mentions of the story, it blew gamers away. Metal Gear Solid was released for the PlayStation on September 1998 in Japan, and the rest of the world by February 1999. Not only was it titled Solid because Kojima found it misleading to call it Metal Gear 3, if nobody outside of Japan played the true predecessors, but it also has 3 meanings. 1. Solid Snake the main protagonist, 2. The jump from 2D to 3D, and 3. Konami mocking their rival Square. A square is a 2-dimension thing, and I guess the president of Konami wanted this game to surpass Square. They wanted to make it a cube, like Solid 3D. Metal Gear Solid is considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest game ever to be released for the PlayStation. But even though I grew up with the PS1, because I was only a little kid at the time, I didn't even know about it, let alone be allowed to play it. It wasn't until I got it off the PlayStation Store did I finally have a chance. After playing the MSX predecessors, Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake in particular was fantastic. Is Metal Gear Solid as good as reviewers and fans said back in 1998? Am I able to stay on track with Kojima's complicated storytelling? Six years after the event in the Zanzibar base in Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, rogue members of Foxhound have taken over a nuclear base on Shadow Moses Island in Alaska. They demand that the US government hand over the remains of Big Boss and $1 billion in under 24 hours, or otherwise they'll launch a nuclear missile. Solid Snake, who was recuperating in Alaska, reluctantly accepted to infiltrate the Shadow Moses base only on the condition that he solely take orders from Roy Campbell, who helped him in Zanzibar 6 years ago. With Codex support from Campbell, Naomi Hunter and Mei Ling, Snake goes along quietly, and the objectives are to rescue DARPA Chief Donald Anderson and Armstec President Kenneth Baker for information on how to thwart the nuclear plans and stop anyone involved. Snake will run into Meryl and Otacon, who also mixed up in the Shadow Moses incident in Metal Gear Rex, but I'm gonna leave it at that because I don't want to spoil anything.
So there's something you like about me, huh?
Yeah, you've got a great butt.
Oh, I see. First it's my eyes, now it's my butt. What's next?
On the battlefield, you never think about what's next.
And neither did Kojima, as he wanted Solid Snake to be as colorless as possible so that every single person who plays this game, regardless of personality, would be able to associate with him.
I'm just a man who's good at what he does, killing. There's no winning or losing for a mercenary. The only winners in war are the people.
All characters were designed by Yoji Shinkawa, who would work with Kojima throughout the rest of his career, including Death Stranding. Each character, major or minor, hero or villain, has a story to tell, especially Liquid Snake.
Following orders blindly with no questions asked, you've lost your warrior's pride and become nothing more than a pawn snake.
What?
You can literally make a video game out of these characters individually. Snake Eater, Peace Walker, and the Phantom Pain are cases in point. The first thing I found obvious were the very long cutscenes and conversations. There are plenty of occasions where you'll be watching or listening for about 5 to 10 minutes. Even trying to skip the codec conversations will take a minute or two. And you have to listen and remember everything they say. And that can be pretty hard if dialogue goes on to the point of Not boredom, that would be sacrilege. There's so much being said you can't keep up and suddenly realize that one of those sentences will become important to future objectives.
There's only one place where we can be sure she's by herself.
Where's that?
Don't be so dense.
But all of it eventually made sense after the final few hours, and I'm relieved that I played the predecessors first.
We've had a couple of run-ins in the past.
You can even make the argument that Metal Gear Solid is a hybrid of a video game and a feature film prepared for the award season. It took around 9.5 hours to beat. Nearly half of those hours were cutscene/codec conversations, and the final cutscenes along with the ending credits is nearly 20 minutes alone. The story with its themes of war, combined with fourth wall breaking humor, symbolism, attention to detail, and structure, all the way to the climax that never seemed to end. Even today, it's in a league of its own. It fits right in with PlayStation's mature focus, and you feel mentally exhausted after finally reaching the ending credits. Just be prepared to sit through a lot of dialogue, but trust me, you will be engaged the whole time.
Is this the first time you ever pointed a gun at a person? Your hands are shaking. Can you shoot me, rookie?
Careful, I'm no rookie.
It's easily the most cinematic PlayStation 1 game I've ever played. Hideo Kojima always wanted to be a movie director, but the only strength he had when he joined Konami was creating things, and was overlooked due to his inability to program. The MSX predecessors already had long cutscenes with endless texted dialogue, but the PlayStation and its 3D capabilities allow Kojima to make the movie he always dreamed of. The cutscene angles, fully 3D rendered in real time, the eerie soundtrack, believable voice acting, and overall production value. It increases engagement and allows seamless transition from storytelling to gameplay. Because we're more used to advanced hardware and that cinematic presentation of this caliber is now mandatory in a story-driven game, this looks dated by today's standards, but back in 1998, this was revolutionary. One of the reasons I've held back on reviewing Metal Gear Solid is because I can't think of anyone worse at this game than me. This is someone who died 5 times just trying to get a mine detector. To play it safe, I selected the training first, a bunch of tasks in a VR environment. The Japanese Special Edition has a third disc containing 300 extra VR missions, while the same disc was released separately as Metal Gear Solid VR missions. After the first couple of hours of gameplay, I've noticed so many similarities to Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, they're clearly not a coincidence. You're Solid Snake entering a base through the vents, and you have to save hostages that know something about the nuclear threat. The manner in which you get spotted, the inventory, a basement with little rooms full of ammo and trapdoors, saving a woman that helps you on your journey with the same codec frequency number, running up so many levels, an anonymous contact, a helicopter boss, an elevator battle, and Metal Gear. So is Metal Gear Solid just a Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake remake? Jesus, the title order is confusing. Well, sort of. Metal Gear Solid may be the third in the series, but this is the one most people played first. Kojima assumed that pretty much nobody played Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake because it was late in the life cycle of a Japan-only system, and wanted to put in what gamers missed out on in 1990. Lots of the best video game franchises have sequels that are pretty much the same, but with a new story and tweaked mechanics. Even movie franchises do that. Like the story, Metal Gear Solid still takes full advantage of the PlayStation hardware, and improves on a lot of the flaws the predecessors had. The first few items include binoculars, a pack of cigarettes,
How are those going to help you?
You never know.
and a codec so you can contact your allies that provide you with useful information. Campbell can tell you what to do next if you miss something, partially. Naomi Hunter is knowledgeable with items and weapons, Mei Ling will save your progress, and Meryl and Otacon know everything about the base. Only specific equipment allows you to progress further, including keycards, items, and weapons. You have to know the surroundings of an area, whether viewing from the first person or radar system, which indicates the field of vision of the enemies and cameras. Most of the time you'll have your eyes glued to this thing. However, if you're playing this on the hardest difficulty, you don't get the radar system at all. Different ways to stay undetected include hiding under tables, using boxes, and even banging on the wall to distract them. But whenever you get caught, you'll have a heart attack. This triggers the alert mode, the radar is jammed, and you have to stay hidden from the enemies for a brief moment. They can spot footsteps and noise, so the AI isn't that stupid. They also have the advantage of Snake not being the most mobile spy, because the controls are another reason why you need to be patient. You don't just pick it up and play. Despite the jump to 3D, it plays similar to the 2D predecessors. It's an overhead perspective with the occasional camera change, which can make it pretty awkward. You can't move in an analog direction. You know what I mean? It's not fluid movement, and that's why shooting, melee attacking, and crawling can be clunky. The camera system is always switching places in-game like Resident Evil, and enemies can appear without notice, highly apparent in the communications tower area. You stand still when you shoot, so you're always vulnerable and exposed to enemy gunfire. Oh, how I hate the turret in the finale. Weapon aim in first person wouldn't be introduced until Metal Gear Solid 2, which makes it a lot better to control. The only time first person view is used here are the RC missiles, stingers, and snipers, which are also aimed with the D-pad. For the first few hours, I always accidentally did a grapple move, like there's a specific place you need to stand in order to choke them out from behind. And it's something you have to learn because melee attacking an enemy only knocks them down for a few seconds. The controls make you want to go through areas without going near the enemies. It could be another way of saying it's a stealth game. You can tell that it's shown its age, but it's forgivable because analog movement wasn't a standard in PlayStation games, with a few exceptions like Ape Escape. And I can take some part of the blame when I played it, because I forgot to pick up the silencer for the pistol, and after I realized I was fighting Metal Gear. I told you I was rubbish at this. At least you have infinite lives, and you restart with your health and ammo replenished to the point of when you entered that area. And speaking of that...
Snake! Answer me! Snake!
Cheesy, right? The boss battles can be frustratingly difficult. The controls are designed for stealth, not high-paced actions. Don't expect to beat one the first time. The real challenge is finding their weaknesses and attack patterns.
I can see into your mind. You like Castlevania, don't you?
How did you know I played Symphony of the Night? Well, as it turns out, the PlayStation is reading the memory card. Not only that, but the controller port. So to stop Psycho Mantis from reading your mind, change the control port and now you have a chance. Sometimes you need to take action outside the game. This doesn't just apply to boss battles. In order to contact Meryl,
it should be on the back of the CD case. Try to contact her.
I'll contact her right away.
And there's a moment when Snake's arm is hurting, so Naomi tells you to put the controller on your arm, simulating a shiatsu massage.
How does that feel, Snake? A little better?
How did you do that?
These unconventional moments are actually in the Guinness Book of Records for the most innovative use of a video game controller. But unlike a complicated movie where you can watch it twice to understand, here you have to work everything out the first time. Take it as a good or bad thing. I'm in the middle of both. Don't get me wrong, everything said here is correct, and sometimes characters straight up tell you what to do. But Kojima might have gotten a bit carried away with the subtle foreshadowing. Sure, the story eventually paid off big time, but I had to use a walkthrough regularly because it was so confusing. However, along with outdated controls and graphics, they don't ruin the game completely, if barely. The story was that compelling, I'm not forgetting it anytime soon. I always persevered because I wanted to see what happened next.
Age hasn't slowed you down one bit.
I was literally lost for words, and this is coming from someone who beat it for the first time this year. In 1998, this was universes ahead of its time. It was a groundbreaker in the stealth genre and structured storytelling with proper dialogue. It was only a matter of time before a video game would do this, but Hideo Kojima was at the right place at the right time. Metal Gear Solid is considered one of the best games on the PlayStation. Well, I concur. This is a masterpiece, and the sales matched its praise, selling over 6 million copies, becoming one of the highest selling games on the PlayStation, and Kojima went from a key asset of Konami to one of the biggest gaming celebrities. There was an increase in stealth franchises, including a Metal Gear Solid Game Boy spin-off which played similar to the second MSX title, and is also considered one of the best games on the system. But with the PlayStation title ending with unanswered questions, and despite Kojima thinking he was done with the series, it was only a matter of time when a sequel was announced.